America can't put any regulation on their immigration without the media saying it's racist, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons is that historically, we did do that.
Hey everybody, real quick, I wanted to thank you for watching. Thanks for being part of the Back to Facts community. And also don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss another video. It helps us so much when you do. Thanks. See you soon.
We know that the Latino community is as diverse as the bodegas in New York and as the breakfast tacos in San Antonio. I saw like a top comment, of course, on like NBC News or ABC News saying, well, at least you didn't call us rapists and murderers. I have a lot to say because I was a reporter on the forefront of this huge influx of Latin American immigrants coming into the area of Atlanta, Georgia. It all started with the Olympics in 1996. And I quickly learned, well, not quickly, but I finally learned that it didn't have to be legal immigration that would come to build the Olympic stadiums, that it was all done through contractors. At that time, I thought enforcement was, enforcement, and that we have technology to enforce. In any case, the community there in Atlanta was thriving, and I did articles about how hardworking and upstanding citizens they were, which is absolutely true. I mean, it's very diverse as breakfast tacos. No, just kidding. But I always felt like in the back of my mind, isn't there a better way? Is it really true in every single industry Americans don't want to do these jobs, and that's why we need to not enforce our immigration laws and allow the system to stay in this sort of limbo? It turns out it really depends on the industry. Farm work, migrant farm workers are a whole different topic because many of them migrate seasonally. And so it makes sense for them to be crossing the border. This is what they've done for generations, often in their families. But instead of allowing for that exception, we left everything loosey-goosey. Who's we? The pro-business neocons and neoliberals. That's who, which was basically everybody. Until the man who said Mexico's not sending their best, often sending murderers and rapists. Well, I think we can all agree that leaving the border unattended and unfortified, thereby making it the job of a skeleton crew, relatively, Border Patrol agents having to fly around and gallop around on horses and go in the middle of the night to chase people down instead of having just a secure border like they have in many countries throughout the world, including even Jordan into Palestinian territories. In fact, Raytheon is the one that built their high-tech border over there. I remember having debates with people like, oh, well, most drug busts are made at ports of entry. It's like, yeah, of course they are. Because nobody's there when it comes across this corrugated Vietnam-era rinky-dink excuse for a barrier. The taco remark by Joe Biden, I'm not so much outraged as I am just not surprised. Many of you might remember from 2016 when Donald Trump, he made a gaffe. He was eating a taco bowl at Trump Tower, and he was like, I love Mexicans, or something like that, which seemed to fall flat after everyone hit the roof with his remark because, sadly, the media has not been telling us the truth about the border. The unofficial figures are way higher, and so he was right, sadly. Many young women crossing the border, their parents give them the day after pill because it's almost guaranteed that they will be raped. We have refugees and asylees, and we have people who cross illegally, and we have legal immigrants. The refugees and asylees that were taken in during the Trump administration plunged. The arrivals to be processed, it plunged finally in 2019. And that was when a lot of the wall was done. Also, the word was in Central America, which were the main countries where people were coming from, it's not going to be as relatively easy as it has been. And when we say easy, we mean you could still die in the back of a semi-truck. But it's all about deterrence. Now, we say, oh, they're fleeing horrible conditions, and some of these have been stalked and their family has been murdered in Central America. And I've written articles about, well, what do we do about this problem? Well, root cause, right? Like Kamala says, The root causes, though, never get solved. And increasing the money that we give to these governments in general does not help because of the governments being run by these old money families who are in bed with the cartels. We can't just keep throwing money at the problem. However, during the pandemic, another thing came to light. We think of Central America as having people who are all poor. No, we only see the poorest and the least literate and the least educated. They're treated so poorly in their countries. But make no mistake, they actually have, in some cases, better infrastructure than we do. I have a friend who was talking to someone who had recently arrived from somewhere in Central America, who said that the healthcare system in the country where she came from is better than it is here. So that's a problem. I have a friend who's an immigration lawyer, and he said Jeff Sessions was the most racist person. He was diabolical and evil because they were putting caps on the amount of people who can come into the country. The thing is, though, America can't put any regulation on their immigration without the media saying it's racist, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons is that historically, we did do that. It was basically excluded anyone from Asia. Just excluded anyone from Asia. We don't know this history, but in the 1920s, America was extremely racist. And this is because immoral and amoral people in charge tried to backdoor the Civil War and change the outcome through state legislatures making laws collectively known as Jim Crow laws that imposed segregation and prohibited Black citizens from running for office in both the state and national level. Now, this is an interesting statistic if you don't believe me. The first 2 Black senators, they were both from Mississippi. You want to know what? After those Jim Crow laws were passed, there wasn't another Black senator until 1967. And even though Edward Brooke took office in 1967, after the Civil Rights Act was passed, he was a Republican just like the first 2. It wasn't until 1993 that the next Black senator took office. Carol Moseley Braun was the first female Black senator in the United States. She was also the second and last Black U.S. senator in the 20th century. And the next Black U.S. senator was Barack Obama. So that right there tells you that what I'm saying about the Jim Crow laws and segregation is true. When was America great? America was great for about 20 years. Maybe less. After the Civil War, the military was down there reconstructing the South. Things were looking up for former slaves. They all got to learn how to read finally, not just the ones who escaped, and really taking control of their lives and prospering greatly. Well, that just wouldn't do, would it? For people who do not value human life, people who do not value justice, people who are only out for themselves with this almost sociopathic attitude, my property and things. Make no mistake, we went into an extremely racist period of time.
This 1915 silent film attempts to justify both Jim Crow and the KKK by suggesting that the 1871 duly elected South Carolina legislature was both corrupt and unable to govern. The Birth of a Nation is known as the first American blockbuster. And like the book and the play it was based on, leading scholars, newspapers, and the NAACP opposed this as an attempt to divide the races and reopen old wounds. Author Thomas Dixon was inspired to write it reportedly after seeing a performance of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin in Connecticut. To him, he was restoring and setting the record straight. The film was a box office smash, partly because it appealed to white Protestant Americans concerned about the rapid rise in immigration. And the film's reception wasn't hurt one bit by Woodrow Wilson agreeing to a special screening of the film in the East Room of the White House shortly before opening day. You see, Thomas Dixon Jr. and Woodrow Wilson had gone to Johns Hopkins together, and there's no doubt that Wilson, a Democrat raised in Augusta, Georgia, was sympathetic to Dixon's beliefs. It was Wilson who segregated the federal employment system, resulting in many Black employees being let go through attrition or relegated to menial tasks. After all, God forbid free blacks and whites could learn to live together in harmony. No, in the film, passage of this bill is cause for melodramatic concern. Here we have the main character lamenting the bill allowing intermarriage between blacks and whites. Naturally, a racist film would use white actors in blackface for leading roles. Here we see a Republican leader of the legislature, along with a military officer and a white Republican carpetbagger discovering the newly designed Klan robes. Birth of a Nation even deigns to reverse engineer the rationale behind use of the white sheets. Seems our fictional fearless leader got the idea for the white sheet after watching two white children scare off some black children by using a white sheet. The film culminates in the black military officer, empowered by those dastardly Republicans, pursuing the beautiful girl through the forest. The damsel threatens to jump from a cliff if the soldier comes any closer, which he does, and she jumps, thereby giving the excuse to the Klan to hunt him down and lynch him. The film directly resulted in the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan, which had been stamped out by the U.S. Congress and President Ulysses S. Grant in 1872. But perhaps the film's most shameful legacy was the glorification of vigilante, quote, justice. Given that the scene is so prominent in this film of the lynching of an actor in blackface, we cannot ignore the film's impact on perpetuating the practice much longer than it should have. Ku Klux Klan membership peaked in 1924 at between 1.5 million and 4 million, depending on the source. That August, 50,000 Klan members marched in Washington, D.C. It was the same year as the Immigration Act of 1924, which was supported by the Ku Klux Klan. The act, which was sponsored and created by a number of prominent eugenicists, put limits on the amount of people who could come into the United States, specifically modeled on a prior census, which contained many more Northern and Western Europeans. And a post-World War I economy generated concerns nationwide about the availability of jobs. As we look back on our nation's various laws on immigration, we tend to forget the prominent role played by the pseudoscience of eugenics, which basically says that those who are, quote, feeble-minded should not reproduce. This idea was so pervasive in the early 20th century that it even influenced Adolf Hitler, and did not abate until the end of World War II, when the entire world saw the destructive consequences.
But sadly, this racist attitude was actually promulgated from the very heights of our intellectual royalty. One man named Madison Grant, he was buddies with Theodore Roosevelt. He was a New Yorker, but he was a conservationist and he loved to go into the outdoors. He wrote a book. It was about the decline of the white race and how it was being diluted and pushed to the side. That came out, I believe, in about 1916. This book was big. And guess who read it? Hitler read it. So I don't know why we don't have this more out in the open. When people are ashamed or they talk about the United States being a racist country, they're not wrong. It's just they need the full story. The full story is that evil always tries to reverse the outcomes of justice. And we've seen this many times. We even saw it after the Revolutionary War. We saw Britain trying to come back and take over again. In the War of 1812, they even burned the White House. I think Dolly Madison got out with a few treasures or something. We saw it with pretty much every achievement toward justice that we've had. There's been a backlash by the evil ones. And evil is as evil does, when I say that. Evil is evil behaving ones. So they limited immigration in those days. You know, they felt that there were too many Irish, too many Eastern Europeans, to the point where now, even though most people who believe in the Constitution, including many conservatives and Republicans, just take it as a given that anybody can achieve the highest that they aspire to as long as they work hard, they believe that, according to the Constitution, we still have any attempt to control our own borders viewed as hate-fueled. This is wrong. I think Donald Trump's remarks about immigration are really what made people seize on saying he was racist. Because before he decided to run in 2016, he was great friends with many in the black community. He supported Jesse Jackson in his run for president. I think he knew it would be unpopular to talk about unregulated and unmitigated immigration that was happening in the early part of this millennium. He probably realized that there was a better way to say it. That quote has been misquoted now a lot. If you're letting criminals in and you're not vetting them, you don't know who's in your country, that's a problem. He had very mixed signals at the border also, where people were hearing from their cousins and their brothers and their everything, and oh, you can come up and get like an actual life that we don't get in Mexico, or we don't get in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, because our own governments don't care about us. That is the truth. So I finally figured out why there's so much resistance to regulating immigration, even to the point where they backdoor a lot of it. Like they'll backdoor the tech workers, you know. I know at Disney in the last few years had to train their own replacements from abroad. There's nothing wrong with regulating immigration. Now, because of Donald Trump being seen as racist and really no attempt to understand what he was talking about, as well as a total media blackout on the actual situation, we have the mess that we're in now. I was out on a hike yesterday and I saw a sticker. There was like a junk pile and there was a sticker on it. It showed people running. Like, you know, if you're ever in San Diego and you're driving along the highway, they'll have a sign that shows people running like a family, because they want you to be careful that people might just come abruptly out of nowhere to cross the highway. It was a sticker like that, but it said that nationalists not wanted. It said your hate is the problem. The situation was so threatening to the establishment, to the neoliberals and neoconservatives who rely on the establishment media to hide what is really going on. It was so threatening that they then tied in Donald Trump's attempt to regulate immigration with white nationalism. And then there was the Charlottesville event, which I find it curious. Where are those people now? They're nobodies. Interesting. Richard Spencer, the guy that organized the Unite the Right March, he's not doing anything. He was an Obama supporter. Jason Kessler, before that march was organized, which was bizarre. It was like young men in khakis, maybe some women. And then they tried to do that same stunt when Glenn Youngkin was running in Virginia. Same thing, khakis. And I found that an ex-convict, Robert Rundo, in Los Angeles, of all places, was recruiting people and telling them they need to wear khakis and have clean haircuts so they, you know, they present well, not like skinheads. And that was before the Charlottesville event. And he went to Charlottesville. The Charlottesville event was really a boon toward the anti-Trump, you know, cadre. Really, it was like a gift falling into their lap. Almost too good, you know? This whole white nationalist idea. And then another thing is when illegal immigrants would murder someone, and then Trump would call attention to it, and he even calls them angel moms or whatever, and angel dads when their child dies like that. The point is not to highlight, oh, they're so horrible, they rape and kill and murder. And no, the point is to say, if they had been properly vetted for immigration into this country, like they do in every other country, if they have a record, then they're not going to come. You know, that would stop a lot of people who have committed murders, who have killed police officers because they didn't want to go back to jail, you know, who were not here legally. And the fact that anytime he brought this up, and the families of these people who have been killed, they were not given a voice. It's because the media saw this as hatred. It's not hatred. I talked to an advocacy group in about 2015. They're very, very nice, and they help immigrants to stay in the country, and it's a great service, and it's usually through the church. And I said to them, well, what do you think about an immigrant who's not here legally, who commits a crime, commits a murder? And the only answer that I got was, well, they should be treated just like any other citizen. Okay, well, I don't know what you guys think, but that's not good enough for me. Like, they didn't even seem that concerned about the crime that was actually committed. And I find this a lot with the corporate media and those on the left. It's that when you're talking about actual crime, it's as long as they haven't had an experience with it, which is true of most of us, then they just kind of almost make light of it, make fun of it. They laugh at murders, except if they're by cops or white people. What Trump was trying to show was that if they had been vetted properly, that person would still be alive. And that's very valid. That's absolutely valid. It's just too bad it got so politicized and mischaracterized. The entire country, at least at high levels, was extremely racist from the late 1800s up through the 1920s, up through until 1964, the Civil Rights Act, because of segregation. And unfortunately, we had new generations being born after the Civil War was settled who were being raised as being racist. But that's not who America really is. I think that most people just want everyone to have the same chances, the equal chances. Not special treatment, apologies made for them, or anything like that, but equal opportunity. But really equal, like the schools in certain areas need to be better. And that's why a lot of Black people are for school choice, because they're not better. Just take a look at the racist history of our country. If we can screen a movie about the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s at the White House, then the immigration laws will be made by people who subscribe to that sort of thing. Those people should not have had power. But unfortunately, the people who value every single one of our citizens, they didn't see this coming. Thank goodness for Jack Kennedy, because before he was assassinated, he set the stage for the Civil Rights Act. And Democrats were very racist, so we got rid of segregation. They've been trying to backdoor that and reverse it ever since by segregating us and being obsessed with race and racism and just pushing. I don't know about you all, but there's always been a certain segment of our society that chooses to be, like skinheads and white supremacists, but nobody ever took them seriously. Well, you start giving them all this attention, and then we get a big spectacle, don't we? Spectacle is very important to the ones who don't value human life in this country. The limits we want to set on legal permanent residents coming in, as well as refugees. Right now, China and India have the most people coming in legally and being accepted here as permanent residents. Bangladesh also, and then Mexico. So India is 70,000, China's 70,000 or maybe more, and Mexico's 50,000, That seems like we're taking a lot of people in from brown countries. So why is it that the media makes it all about race? And all Donald Trump was trying to say is, well, shouldn't we be trying to bring in talent like a business? Shouldn't we be trying to bring in some people who are going to contribute to society rather than needing help, which is okay too? He set some caps, but then not even that many people actually came in. It was 30,000 in 2018, and then 30,000 in 2019, and then because of the pandemic, it was 11,000 refugees. And then, of course, with the Afghanistan absolute utter debacle, incompetent handling of the withdrawal, they had to make a special category for Afghan refugees. And you think those people want to be in our country more than they want to be at home? No. And we really, really, really screwed that one up. And we also tried to cover it up, the fact that the war was just going on and on and on. That was what General Flynn was trying to do, was trying to reveal we weren't trying to win this war. But back to the refugee caps. So Joe Biden announced that for 2021 he was going to have a refugee cap of 125,000, which again compared to Donald Trump's 30,000. But there was some kind of outcry in Congress, so he said, okay, we'll make it 62,500. But next year we're going to do 125,000. Same people who are keeping our troops abroad, causing more problems than they solve, and causing unnecessary wars, are using the immigration caps, limits, as a political tool. The short-term impact of politicizing immigration regulation is simply keeping us divided. acting like, oh God, we can't do that. I have actual friends of mine who were not interested in what was really going on in Central America. Not interested at all. Not interested in discouraging or having a deterrent to them coming in, which would be a win-win even for them. If they can increase their standard of living in those countries, wouldn't that be better than coming to America, which has a much harsher way of life than many countries where brown people live, with much more of a relaxed, more of an extended family type attitude, whereas here we're so punctual and remember, being punctual is racist. No, I'm just kidding. But really, wouldn't it be better to have a deterrent and bring the whole issue out of the shadows? That's the problem I have with it, is that if you're keeping the population that is undocumented here in the shadows, there's just more room for abuse. And I don't really care what laws are on the books. You always got to look at the enforcement of the laws. That's a really big thing that corporate media has not explored or gone into probably for 30 years, I would say. Regulating immigration no longer has to do with hate. It did when they had the Asian Exclusion Act, okay? Well, we also cut off Japan's fuel supply, which was one reason they attacked Pearl Harbor, okay? We were very racist, and we were very unjust toward many other countries. Are we perfect now? Are we all non-racist? No. But when somebody comes and earnestly tries to fix a system and reveal what has been hidden, whether it was through the fentanyl epidemic and, factories being shuttered and everything, and all that started to come back. But somehow, there were enough people who bought the lie that half of our country is racist. I'm telling you right now. No way it's half. It's probably, who knows, a passive sort of, not understanding a group that you don't interact with and needing to learn more. That's probably a lot of people. Do they have ill will or hate? No. But they'd like their government to at least take care of people, of them and other people born here, whatever their race. At least give them the kind of treatment they give people in Ukraine. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.